The antique shop had been calling to Marcus for weeks. Every morning on his way to work, he'd slow his pace as he passed the narrow storefront wedged between a dry cleaner and a coffee shop. The dusty window displayed an eclectic collection of oddities. Ornate music boxes, tarnished mirrors, and weathered dolls with glassy eyes that seemed to track his movement. Today, the open sign flickered weakly in the dim interior. A bell chimed as Marcus pushed through the heavy door, its sound somehow deeper and more resonant than it should have been. The shop stretched back much farther than the modest storefront suggested, disappearing into shadows between towering shelves crammed with forgotten treasures. "Can I help you find something specific?" Marcus startled. The proprietor had materialized beside him, an elderly man with paper-thin skin and fingers that were too long, too pale. His smile revealed teeth that seemed to have too many points. "Just browsing," Marcus managed, trying to shake off his unease. The old man's smile widened. "Of course. Take your time. Sometimes the right piece finds you." Marcus wandered deeper into the shop, past grandfather clocks that ticked in different rhythms, creating a disjointed symphony. He found himself drawn to a display case in the back corner, where a collection of vintage photographs lay arranged on faded velvet. The images were hauntingly beautiful. Victorian families posed in formal portraits, children with serious expressions, elderly couples with eyes full of stories.
One photograph made him pause. A young woman in a white dress stood beside a man in a dark suit. Their faces were sharp and clear, but something about their eyes seemed wrong, too bright, too aware. "Ah, you have excellent taste," the proprietor said, appearing once again at Marcus's shoulder. "That's from the Whitmore estate. Tragic story, really. The entire family vanished one autumn night in 1897. Only the photographs remained." Marcus couldn't look away from the image. The woman's smile seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at it. "How much?" "For you, $25. It was a steal for such a well-preserved piece. Marcus paid quickly and left with the photograph wrapped in brown paper. That night, he hung it in his living room above the mantel. The couple looked dignified in their ornate frame, adding an air of sophistication to his modest apartment. He went to bed feeling pleased with his purchase. He woke to the sound of whispering. Marcus lay still in the dune, straining to hear. The voices were soft, indistinct, coming from somewhere in his apartment. He crept to his bedroom door and peered into the living room. Moonlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the photograph. The couple stood in the same poses, but something was different. The man's head was turned slightly, as if he'd been looking toward the woman when the portrait was taken. But Marcus clearly remembered him facing forward. He approached the photograph slowly. In the silvery light, the woman's dress seemed to shimmer, and her eyes, those two bright eyes, followed his movement. "You can see us," she whispered, her voice drifting from the frame like smoke. Marcus stumbled backward, his heart hammering. The woman's lips hadn't moved, but he'd heard her clearly. "Don't be afraid," the man spoke now, his voice deep and cultured. "We'd been waiting so long for someone who could see, someone who could hear." "This isn't real," Marcus said aloud, his voice shaking. "This is just a photograph." The woman laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Is it? Are you so certain?" Marcus grabbed the frame, intending to turn it face down or hide it away. The moment his fingers touched the glass, cold shot up his arms. The world tilted, and suddenly he was elsewhere. He stood in a grand Victorian parlor, heavy with the scent of roses and something else, something sweet and cloying that made his stomach turn. The couple from the photograph sat on an ornate sofa, but they were no longer frozen in sepia tones. Their skin was pale as moonlight, their eyes dark hollows. "Welcome," the woman said, rising gracefully. "We are the Whitmores, and you, dear Marcus, are going to help us." "Help you with what?" The question escaped before he could stop it. The man smiled, revealing those same pointed teeth Marcus had noticed on the shop proprietor. "Help us find new frames, of course. We've grown so tired of this old photograph. It's been our prison for over a century." Marcus tried to run, but his feet wouldn't move. The parlor began to shift and blur around the edges, like a photograph developing in reverse. "The collector finds us new hosts," Mrs. Whitmore explained conversationally. "People with the sight, people like you. And in return, we let him add to his collection." "I don't understand." "You will." Mr. Whitmore stood and approached Marcus with fluid movements. "The process is quite simple. We take your place in the world of the living, and you take ours in the photograph. The collector has been doing this for decades. How do you think he stays so young?" The truth hit Marcus like ice water. The proprietor's ageless face, his two long fingers, his knowing smile. He wasn't just a shopkeeper. He was one of them. One of the trapped ones who had found a way out. "Please," Marcus whispered. "I'll put the photograph back. I'll never tell anyone." "Oh, but you can't put it back," Mrs. Whitmore said with mock sympathy. "The transaction is complete. You bought us, and now," she reached out with fingers that stretched like shadows, "we're going to buy our freedom with your life." The parlor dissolved into darkness. Marcus felt himself falling, shrinking, becoming smaller and flatter until he was pressed against cold glass. When his vision cleared, he was looking out from a frame at his own living room. A man who looked exactly like Marcus stood in front of the mantel. But his eyes held that same terrible brightness, that ancient awareness. The thing wearing his face smiled at him with too many teeth. "Thank you," it said in Marcus's voice. "I do hope you'll be comfortable in there, though I suspect comfort is relative when you have eternity to consider it." The creature that had been Mr. Whitmore walked to the window and looked out at the city beyond. "So many people," it mused. "So many potential customers for our dear collector. I think I'm going to enjoy this century much more than the last." Marcus tried to scream, but no sound came. He was trapped behind the glass, just another antique in someone's living room, waiting for the next unsuspecting buyer to notice something strange about the photograph's eyes. Somewhere across the city, in a narrow shop between a dry cleaner and a coffee shop, an old man arranged a new photograph in his display case. A young man in modern clothes stood alone in the frame, his mouth open in a silent scream, his eyes wide with the terrible understanding of the truly damned. The collector smiled and flipped his sign to open. There was always someone new walking by, always someone who couldn't resist the call of a genuine antique. After all, the best collections were built one piece at a time.